Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Make sure everybody can hear me first. All right, first off, I need to give a few thanks. First, I need to give thanks to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. He's the one that's led me to this place that I'm in right now. And I know it may sound it might sound funny to some people, but he was what was behind that entire city council meeting. I really believe that. The second thanks I need to give is to my wife, Yolanda. She's right by my side. She's been right by my side through this whole thing. I couldn't have done any of this without her. She's been wonderful support. We get on each other's nerves sometimes, but we have to pull it back in the road and realize that we cannot do this. Either one of us cannot do it alone. So I want to give thanks to her also. And then I want to thank Larry and Don. Yes, I want to thank both of them for inviting me. And Dennis as well. And anybody else who was involved with getting me here, I want to give you thanks for the invitation. I truly appreciate it. This is a great crowd. I had a fantastic time at the gun range today. Fantastic time at the gun range today. A fantastic time at the gun range today. So, for those of y'all who may not know who I am, let me give you the whole story about who I am and how this all got started for me. My name is Mark Keith Robinson. I am from Greensboro, North Carolina. I am the ninth of 10 children. 5 boys, 5 girls. I have some little strange, interesting facts about my family. I actually have 2 sisters that I never saw. They both passed away now, and I never saw them, never laid eyes on them, never met them. That's a story for another time when we talk about something else. But I grew up right there in Greensboro. I spent all my life in Greensboro, except for a little bit of time that I spent in the United States Army. Greensboro's a wonderful town, and I love it. One of the overriding things in my life growing up was fairness. Okay, remember as children, in a large family, one of the things that we always would argue is, that's not fair. I remember hearing that distinctly throughout my life. That's not fair. That's not fair. We always argued what was fair and unfair. Fairness is what actually ended up bringing me to that city council meeting that night. Now, for those of y'all that don't know the backstory, here it is. I'm still not a gun owner. I have some guns that I have to go and pick up. I have not picked up yet, but I do not physically own any weapons right now. I have not really ever owned any firearms, save for a little small .22 pistol I had once. But the length and breadth of my experience with firearms mostly came in the United States military. I actually saw a friend's AR-15 on Facebook and was intrigued by it and asked him about it. He told me he built it, which intrigued me even more. I made the decision to actually buy one and was actively seeking out a weapon to purchase. Well, in the midst of seeking out a weapon to purchase, all of my friends who are gun owners told me that I should go to the Greensboro Gun Show because it's the best gun show in the whole entire world, and pick out a weapon there. He said you can get the best weapon for the best price. So I was just giddy with excitement, ready to go to this gun show that I hadn't been to in 30 plus years. Well, lo and behold, I wake up one morning, get dressed for work, and I hear somebody on the news say that the Greensboro City Council wanted to cancel the Greensboro Gun Show, which has been held in Greensboro since 1970 without any acts of violence or anything. Nothing's ever happened at this thing. They wanted to cancel this gun show. And the exact quote was, in light of the events in Florida. In other words, they were going to cancel the gun show for thousands of customers and hundreds of vendors and cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue because of the act of one criminal in another state. How unfair is that? That is exactly what I thought. How unfair is that? So, I'm big on social media. I went on the social media and I was raging about it. Somebody told me, they said, well, the city council can't cancel the gun show. Only the Coliseum director can do that. So I was kind of relieved. I think they came on the news and said as much. So I was sort of relieved. I went on for about a week or two. I was getting up one morning, listening to the news again, and they came on and said the Greensboro City Council will have a meeting this evening at 5:30. When all of you hardworking people are on your way home from work, so you can't come down there and say anything about it, to discuss gun violence. When I heard that phrase, I automatically knew what it meant. I knew they were going to bring down a bunch of David Hogg lookalikes to our city council. And they were going to read these heartfelt letters about how the guns are killing our children and put pressure on this Coliseum director to end that gun show. And I knew I had to work a 10-hour shift that day, but I also knew something else. I knew there was much gum flapping as I did on social media, that I would be an absolute hypocrite if I did not make the sacrifice to get off work and head down there to that meeting. I went off to work and I struggled the entire day and thought of 10,000 reasons why I shouldn't go. Couldn't come up with it. And I finally made the decision. I said, I'm going. And, I'm going to go down. I'm not going to speak because I don't have time to prepare a speech. I don't want to get up there and say the wrong thing. I'm not going to, I don't want to say the wrong thing and even damage the cause even more. So I'm just going to go down. I'm sure people will be there speaking up for the gun show. So I did. I got off of work. I came home and, kind of freshened up just a little bit. And I went on down with my work clothes on. And I sat in that hall and I listened to person after person get up in front of that microphone and get up in front of that city council. And they said the most outrageous things you'd ever want to hear. They talked about everything except personal responsibility for those who commit crimes with firearms. And they talked about everything except protecting and defending our constitutional Second Amendment right. But everything else they talked about, how bad guns are, how dangerous they are. They talked about minorities and they talked about women and the disenfranchised and a bunch of other stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with the substantive problem of making sure that law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights are not infringed. There was even a young man who stood in front of that city council and made a quasi-dirty joke. And it was about that time when I heard that young man say that I made up my mind. I said, I'm going to go up here and speak because I can't hold back anymore. I can no longer sit here and listen to this trash being spewed, these lies being spewed. So I got up, I went up, I signed up, I walked up, I stood there at that podium and I thought, what in the world am I going to say to these people? But here it comes, folks. It's the part when not liberals, when leftists look at you like you're crazy. Because it was in that moment that I realized what real courage is and where real courage comes from. Real courage is not this thing that you get from a John Wayne movie. We got to saddle up and go, that's not real courage. That's not courage. That's something they make out in the movies for dramatics. Real courage is when you give it up and let go and ask a higher power for help. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but my higher power is Jesus Christ. And in that moment, standing there at that podium, I didn't look up physically, but mentally I looked up to him. And he answered. And he said, just walk up, be yourself, and I'll do the rest. And he did. I walked up there and opened my mouth and was able to speak for millions of people. Millions of people, simply because I treated that call was a call from Jesus Christ, from God in heaven. Because I know this. God wants us to be free. He granted us with our freedom. And when he sees people being oppressed, he'll send people. he'll send people to try to free the oppressed, to try to relieve the oppressed. And I really believe that that's what that speech has been intended to do. It's been intended to wake people up, inspire people, to create a million of me, and to let these politicians know, hey, you're not dealing with a bunch of sheep. You might think you're dealing with sheep because people are being polite and they're yielding to you right now. But what happens when the sheep no longer yield and realize that you're not their masters, but the exact opposite? Amen. That you're their masters. Amen. That the people are their masters. That's the way that our founders intended it to be. Right. These politicians weren't sent to office to sit in high places and look low. These politicians are supposed to be sitting in a low place and looking high, looking towards heaven for answers to give to the people that they're sitting with. But all too often what they do is they sit in these high places and send down these edicts that don't do you and me any good whatsoever. And what they count on our complicity, and more than anything, they count on our silence. It is time to end that silence. It is time to raise our voices and be a thunder that's right behind those walls. Here's my dream for politicians in this country. I want them all to wake up every day afraid. Yeah, afraid. I want them to be afraid that another Mark Keith Robinson is going to walk in one of their halls tomorrow and give them hell. I want them to be afraid that when voting time comes around, that seat they've held for 30 years is not going to be assured because millions of people have waken up and decided, you haven't done anything in 30 years. You don't need another 4. You got to get out of here so we can get somebody in here that's going to do our bidding. So that's my dream for these politicians, that they get a big wake-up call. And we're the people that need to send it. So that's what happened that night at that city council meeting. I went up there and spoke, and, when I got done, I know a lot of people realized as soon as I got finished, I left. I said, come hell or high water, and I turned around and I left. And the reason why I left that hall, it's funny, the reason why I left the halls, I actually didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to get attacked, arrested, or what. I wasn't sure. So I left. I was so charged up and heated up, I wanted to just get out so I could just go be by myself, and that's what I did. I got out as quick as I could. I went to my car. I went home. I got home, my wife, she asked me. She said, how'd the meeting go? I said, it went all right, I guess. She said, did you speak? And I said, yeah. She said, what did you say? I said, I don't know. And I wasn't really sure what I'd said. But the next morning is when everything took off. Our congressman called us, Fox News called, and it's grown since then. And it's really been a blessing. And like I said, and the biggest blessing I've received out of all of them is seeing how many people it's actually inspired. So that meeting, that's the whole story behind that meeting. And that's why it happened and how it happened. And like I said, I just feel blessed. It's a blessing beyond measure. I never would have believed. I have actually prayed and asked God what it is he wants me to do for him. When do you want me to step out and do something for you? I never would have dreamed in a million years that he would have me speak up for all things, a gun show. A gun show. But that leads me to my second point. Why would I speak up for a gun show? Well, it goes deeper than the gun show. What I was speaking for really was this. I was speaking for our Second Amendment rights. Now, I know there are a lot of people that have a hard time mixing Jesus Christ and God and religion with our Second Amendment. Why in the world why would Jesus Christ want you to have an AR-15? That's the most ridiculous thing ever. That's just ridiculous. Why would Jesus Christ want you to have a weapon that could kill people? My response is this. Why did God, Jesus is God in flesh. He's the creator. Why would God give bears those giant claws and those giant teeth that can kill? Why would he do that? Why would he give sharks the ability to swim at 40 miles an hour and have those giant fangs in their mouth? Why would he give snakes venom? Why would he give gorillas great strength? You know, why would he give, I use this example all the time. Why would he give a little tiny garden slug an enzyme inside of him that makes his taste, make him taste unappealing to his predators? He did that so those animals could protect themselves. He made a slug be able to protect itself. Why in the world would he not make human beings be able to protect themselves? Amen. The Second Amendment is not a right that's given to us by our Constitution. The Second Amendment is a right that is expressly given to us by God, by our Creator. It is affirmed by our Second Amendment, but it's given to us by God. And he gave it to us because he understands who we are as human beings. He understands that we need to hunt to eat. He understands that some individuals are just not going to play nice no matter what you do. And that sometimes, unfortunately, some people have to be dealt with serious physical violence. And the only problem with that serious physical violence is not knowing when to use it. Law-abiding citizens do. Yes. And their ability to do so should never be taken away by governments. When Second Amendment rights, when the right to bear arms is taken away from any people, either one of two things happen. The first thing that often happens is this, and we can see that in plenty of examples around the world right now. Crime goes through the roof. When criminals know that the law-abiding can't fight back, they have no qualms in fighting the law-abiding, attacking the law-abiding. So crime goes through the roof. The second thing that always happens, it always happens, when there is no ability for people to defend themselves in nations, governments always become despotic. Yes, right. Not sometimes, not 75% of the time or even 95% of the time, they always become overbearing and despotic. They begin to make rules that are intolerable. They make taxes that are intolerable. And in some cases, they simply enslave people. And there's enough examples of that happening right in the 20th century that it should serve as an example to this country to stay unique and stay on the course and stay with the God-given right to bear arms that we have under our Second Amendment. Any politician who seeks to fundamentally change our Constitution, we should not consider them a patriot of this nation nor a friend of this nation. Amen. And we should never vote for them under any circumstances. Breaching the Second Amendment is a slippery slope into despotism. And I can guarantee you this, folks, people can call us conspiracy theorists all they want to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. What I am is a historian. I can back up everything I'm saying. If you care to pay for the plane tickets, anybody that disagrees, you want to pay for the plane tickets, we can go on a world tour of mass murder around the globe. Mm-hmm. And we can go to the mass graves of people in Germany and Russia and Yugoslavia and in South America. We can go to these places and we can see these mass graves. And every one of those places shares one thing in common. The people had no way to fight back. They were disarmed. Yep. It was one of the first steps, if not the first step. They were disarmed and helpless and left at the mercy of madmen who murdered not thousands, but millions, and in some cases, hundreds of millions. So this whole issue with the Second Amendment, that's the linchpin of the entire thing. If we want this country to survive, if we want our Constitution to survive, we have got to hold on to our Second Amendment, and we have got to make sure that we are putting politicians in office who feel the same way. That's why this whole thing is so important, and it goes hand in hand with my third point here. Has anybody noticed how the left is all of a sudden embracing criminals, openly embracing criminals. I mean, we had this nutty, what's this Nutty Nancy, what's her name? Pelosi, that's her name. I need a drink of water after saying that. This lady, actually, she seems like she prefers members of Marisol Truca 13 over our president.
She does.
Killers who hack people up. They hack up teenagers with machetes and beat them with baseball bats and set them on fire, burn them alive.
They're animals.
They're animals, exactly. And she prefers them to the President of the United States. Why? Because the President of the United States is not a socialist. He's a patriot, and she despises him. Just like all good socialists despise our president because he's a patriot. But they're embracing criminals. You look at all the cases that we've seen, the Michael Browns and the Trayvon Martins and all this. You know, these guys, I don't care what anybody says. And I want y'all to look at me. You all can see, you know. But see, this doesn't have anything to do with it because it's not about what's in here.
Amen.
On here. It's what's in here.
Yep.
And what's in here.
Amen.
I'm not falling for what they call the Holy Ghost. I see the tricks the media uses. When they show the guy, when they show the guy, they show him with his kids and he's smiling, but then you look at the picture on his social media and he's got 2 guns, and he's got F the police tattooed on him, and you wonder why he ended up shot and killed by the police. I know why he ended up shot and killed by the police, because he was a criminal. That's why he was shot and killed by the police. But our news media, and I can go on and on about them for the rest of the night. Biggest enemy the world has right now is the news media. They will twist and turn things up on their ears. Right now, they have the criminals as the good guys and the police officers as the bad guys. Now, you think about this. The very same people who support letting people into our country illegally, unchecked, unvetted, don't care if you're a member of MS-13 or not, don't care whether you're a human trafficker, come on in. Those are the same people. These same people who argue against our Second Amendment. Now, why would that be? Those same socialists who want to bring this country down, they're the same ones that argue against our Second Amendment. Why would that be? I'm just thinking that maybe these folks aren't planning on using those people as their allies, maybe. Just like they did in some other countries I can think of, like Soviet Russia, where Joseph Stalin, for those of you all that don't know how he got his start, Joseph Stalin was a bank robber. He worked for the Communist Party. That's how he raised funds for the Communist Party, by robbing banks. When I think about that, when I think about how despotic that is, how sick that is, it boils my blood. And it motivates me to keep going. Because I'm telling you folks, we have got to understand the folks that we are standing up against, they are not Democrats. They call themselves Democrats, but they're not Democrats. Let's be real about it. John F. Kennedy was a Democrat.
Yep.
These folks are not Democrats. These folks are socialists. They are Marxist socialists. They are the great grandchildren of Lenin and Stalin and Mao. They're not any more interested in seeing this country continue to be a capitalist nation founded on the Declaration of Independence and the freedom, God-given freedoms we have, than would be any communist that's ever lived. They are absolutely dedicated to bringing this country down to the level of socialism that the rest of the world has been brought down to. The only thing that's standing in front of them is a few million patriots. And I'm one of them, and I hope that you are too. We have to make up our minds whether or not we're going to take this thing seriously. We have to make up our minds whether or not we have the courage to stand up to these folks. Because I'm going to tell you what, they certainly have the courage to stand up to you. They'll spit in your face every chance they get. They'll lie on you every chance they get. They'll try to take away your rights every chance they get. They'll try to hamstring your children and your future generations every chance they get. So we got to be just as bold. We got to get in their faces. Just like Maxine Waters said, she wants people to get in Trump supporters' faces. The only difference is this. We have to do ours legally, and we can't. We have to make sure that we're going down, we're volunteering for people's candidates, for local candidates. Remember, all politics is local. That's where it makes the most impact. So we got to get out, we got to go down, and we got to volunteer for these candidates. We got to start putting our money where our mouth is. We can no longer afford to sit at home and think that somebody else is going to do it. Right. It is up to us. Each and every person in this room, it's up to us. There's a famous saying from World War I, and I can't remember the entire saying, but this fellow was a barber, and he was a message runner during World War I, and he was killed trying to ferry a message across the line. And when they found his Bible on him, inside the flyleaf of the Bible, he had a quote that said something like, that America had to win this war, therefore I must save, I must do what I have to do. But the last line of it is the most incredible line when he says, he has to do all those things as if the entire issue depends upon me. That's how we have to think about this. When we're sitting at home, when we're watching, we see something come on television, CNN, and we get angry about it, or we hear about this crazy politician promoting this crazy bill that's restricting our rights even further, we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to do? And then after we ask ourselves what we're willing to do, we have to realize that we might be the linchpin that makes the decision. We have to saddle that up on our own shoulders. Our freedom is on our shoulders. It's not on our neighbor's shoulders. It's not on the guy down the street. It's not on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's on our shoulders. It's a responsibility that we have to carry. And it's a responsibility that we have to carry out. So when we're thinking about this entire issue, that's how we have to think about it. We have to understand that it is up to us. And we've got to do it. Because I do not want to leave anything less to my children and grandchildren than what was left to me. I want my grandson to grow up with the same freedoms I had. And if I don't leave him those freedoms, I'm going to have to look him in his face one day and tell him why he doesn't have them. And I don't want that to happen, and I know you don't either. So that's why our Second Amendment is so important, and that's why we have to fight for it. Now, I wasn't going to mention this, but I would be remiss if I didn't. One word, kneeling. No reaction? Kneeling. We're not talking about praying. We're not talking about getting down on your knee asking your baby's mama to marry you. We're talking about these idiots who take the chance, excuse me, not the chance, these idiots who use their blessing of being able to play American football for millions of dollars on a national stage to spit in all our faces. That's exactly what they're doing. You make no mistake about it. How many of you all saw any of the guys that were kneeling last football season? How many of you all saw them do anything on the off season besides get arrested for drunk driving and get arrested for beating their girlfriends? Zero. You see, that whole kneeling thing is only good during the national anthem. You only want to make a statement during the national anthem. But on the off season, you don't want to go out to Chicago. You don't want to get 10 or 12 of your millionaire buddies and mount your money, put your money where your mouth is, and go up there to Chicago with the police and give them some extra money and some extra time and the benefit of your notoriety to help fight those street gangs. You don't want to do that. You want to take your stand when it's easy and convenient and can make you feel good. Because now I get to denigrate the great United States, which is paying me millions of dollars for playing a child's game. I'll tell you this, folks, I love football growing up. I love the NFL. I love watching it. But a series of events caused me to completely turn my back on that organization. The first thing that really cinched me to no end was the way they treated Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow embodied everything that the NFL should want young men to be. A young Christian man who was unafraid to proclaim his religion. Couldn't find one thing on this guy. And believe me, I believe they tried. Couldn't find one thing on him. Charitable, well-spoken, intelligent. Everything that a sports organization should want as the face of their organization. And what did they do? They drummed him out because he loved Jesus Christ and he loved this nation. But they use our flag as their symbol. How hypocritical can you be? That was the first thing that really turned my stomach. The second thing that turned my stomach is when those 5 Dallas officers were killed. And Jerry Jones said he wanted to put a symbol on the players' helmets to commemorate those 5 officers. And the NFL, the bastion of free speech that allows these idiots to kneel down during the national anthem, told him, no, you can't do that. Why can't I honor 5 fallen officers on the field? But this idiot, Colin Kaepernick, and his stupid buddies can kneel down during the national anthem. Why? Because the NFL is a leftist organization that pushes a leftist agenda based on lies for the purposes of further denigrating this country in the eyes of our youth. That's why I no longer watch it and no longer will until something serious changes. I feel the same way about the Nike Corporation. The Nike Corporation had the nerve to use the word sacrifice, describing Colin Kaepernick, an idiot millionaire who's never sacrificed anything. You think about the young men in this country, the millions of young men in this country who left their homes, left their families, went overseas, and gave their lives. Never had children, never got married, never had grandchildren. They gave up their whole lives and all their possessions, everything they had, everything they would be for this nation. Gave it up for people like Colin Kaepernick. They sacrificed absolutely everything.
That's right.
And Nike has the nerve to use the word sacrifice to describe Colin Kaepernick. Suffice to say, there won't be any more Nikes being bought into my household. I'm going to wrap this up with 2 things, folks. First thing is this. November is coming. It's almost here. Yep. It's almost here, folks. And this, I'm telling you, this is a big one. You all know it. This is huge. Right now, this country sits on the precipice. We have a president in office right now that's proud of America, proud to be an American. He's making America great. Every week, this guy is doing something else to make